Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the Fiio K11 R2R, a $160 DAC and headphone amplifier. This was sent over to me for review directly from Fiio. They have asked nothing in return other than a fair and honest evaluation, which you are about to get. I am an affiliate link partner with some retailers who carry this model, though, so I will put affiliate links for this to those retailers down in the description below. So if you like what you see and want to buy this product here and you want to help support the channel, please consider using one of those affiliate links, and I will get a small kickback if you do, and I only put affiliate link money back into the channel to help keep it running. All right, this is a really intriguing piece because this at $160 is, if not the cheapest, it is among the cheapest resistor ladder DAC options, or R2R options, on the market right now. So, on the other side of shameless self-promotion, we'll talk a little bit about what an R2R DAC even is, because on an entry-level product like this, some of you folks might be new to the hobby and might wonder, what the heck is that? So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then why they tend to be more expensive, and so why having a $160 option there is new and exciting. And then, of course, we'll also talk about how this stacks up with other entry-level pieces on the market that are not resistor ladder options, and so forth. So stick around after shameless self-promotion. Here we go.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
All right, my real quick takeaway for you users out there who already know what an R2R DAC is and don't need info on that, like, what do I think of this unit? It's pretty good. It's a pretty compelling value. Is it the best sounding under $200 DAC amp available on the market right now? No, I don't think so, and I'll make a comparison with a unit that I think sounds a little bit better here in this review. But when you throw in the really robust feature set that this unit offers and its pretty decent sonic performance, I do think that it becomes a pretty compelling value. So whether you're a newbie starting out on your journey, or you're a more experienced audiophile and you want to get a friend who is a newbie hooked on audio, good quality audio and all of that, this is a really compelling starting point for the combination of price, features, and performance that it offers. There is, however, one issue that I had that might be isolated with this unit, and that is the USB connection to the Windows operating system. I have some thoughts that I'll share on that as the review unfolds. So stick around for all of that here as the review unfolds, and I will timestamp this video out as I do all of my videos so you can jump around and watch the parts that are of most interest and relevance to you. Okay. So given the price of this unit and that it's an entry-level piece, it would not surprise me if some new members of the audience are out there wondering how they get started on this audio journey with higher quality listening experiences, and you're thinking, what is R2R? All right, real quick. There are multiple ways to convert a digital audio signal that comes from your streaming service or the files on your computer, the FLAC files, MP3 files, whatever, on your computer or on a music player or on a CD, frankly, although those are WAV files, okay? There are a couple of ways you can convert those digital files, which are just big groups of ones and zeros, into an analog waveform, which our brains will hear as a sound wave, okay? The most common approach, particularly at the lower price end these days, is what's called a delta sigma approach. And all that really means is that they're basically using what is essentially a computer microchip to convert the ones and zeros to an analog signal. The other way that is out there, or an other way that is common in audio but tends to be more expensive, is to use what's called a resistor ladder. This is an array of resistors, just the electrical components known as resistors, that are laid out in a geometric way that looks like a ladder, frankly, like the kind of thing you'd lean up against the side of your house to climb up on a roof. It just literally looks like a ladder in an array of resistors. And the way they are all arranged in the circuit together, they will take the incoming digital signal and output an analog waveform. That approach, the resistor ladder, or for short, they call it R2R, okay, tends to be a bit more expensive because it requires more parts, okay, because you need an array of resistors. You need lots of resistors in there instead of just a single microchip. And that, of course, often takes up more room on a circuit board and requires more printing and more electrical traces on a circuit board, so on and so forth. Like, for example, Fiio offers a K11 that is a chip-based DAC. I believe it uses an AKM chip in it. That is $120 or something like that. So it's, $40, $50 cheaper than this. So that's just like one example there of how just stepping up to R2R does increase price a little bit. But at $160 and having a headphone amp in here, this unit is now kind of the low point on, at least for desktop gear, in terms of the low price point, in terms of getting into the resistor ladder approach to digital to analog conversion. Okay, now about this unit itself. It is feature packed. And again, it's worth repeating, $160 for this. It will decode PCM files up to 32-bit 384 kilohertz. It will also decode DSD files up to DSD 256. There is an oversampling filter in here before the resistor ladder that you can defeat. So it has a non-oversampling mode. Again, for the new folks out there, just real quick, the oversampling on here, what that basically does, real simple terms, is it kind of starts the process of digital to analog conversion either before the resistor ladder or sometimes a DAC chip in there. Again, very simplified language in there. And so what it does is it takes, say, an incoming 44.1 kilohertz bit stream and will upsample it to, in this case, 384, just to help the resistor ladder or the DAC chip or whatever is in there run a little bit more efficiently. Now, those oversampling filters do vary in quality and so forth, and so if you don't like what this one does, you can defeat that and bypass it altogether and use the non-oversampling feature on this, which just takes whatever the bit stream is coming in and sends it right to the resistor ladder with no oversampling or upsampling or anything like that. Does that affect the sound on this unit? Yes, it does, and we'll talk about that when we get to the sound part of this review. Okay, other features of this unit here. The headphone amplifier in it is rated at 1300 milliwatts per channel into, I believe, a 32 ohm load. From the balanced output, the single-ended output has half of that output power. So again, it has a headphone amp in it as well. It can be used as a DAC only. There's an RCA single-ended analog output on the back, which can be a line out or a pre-out. So you can use this as a preamp. There is also, you can change the coaxial digital connector on the back. This can be either an input or an output, so you can use this as a USB bridge and a DDC, okay, or a digital to digital converter if you like. Okay, there's also on this, there are 3 gain settings to it. I'm going to show you a different viewpoint of this where navigate the menu and talk more about the features, but it is just loaded to the hilt with features and options, especially for a device of this price. All right, so let's go ahead and cut to that clip where I show you a different viewpoint and I talk about the build of this and how to navigate the menu and what some of the features do and one of the usability quirks about the gain setting in there that might be important. Okay, so let's go ahead and cut to that. All right, let's do a quasi close-up view here so that I can show you the front panel, and I'll also show you the menu navigation. Come on, camera, you can focus. You just did it a moment ago. All right, and I've also left my iPad here plugged into this via USB, so you can see that big lit up Fiio sign here on the front. And this light here changes colors with sampling rate and also like DSD. Okay, a lot of DACs have features like this. This on its default setting, very bright. Okay, will really light up a darkened room, but it is fully dimmable, and you can even make it like pulsate if you want to. Okay, so don't let that worry you, but I just thought that I would make a note of it and show it there. Okay, front panel, pretty elegant and simple. We have a multifunction knob right here. We have a nice little LED display here that is, you know, fairly big for the unit size and also has a lot of nice information on it, such as sampling rate, volume level. Okay, so turn the multifunction knob, you turn the volume level, which output type you have here. So PO, which is either stands for phone out or powered out. I'm not sure which it is, but that means these here are active. Okay, and then that is also switchable. I'll show you just a moment. And then of course we're at PCM, and then the gain setting right there, I'm on high gain because I tend to think devices like this just sound better on high gain. Even for easier to drive stuff, they just sound more controlled to me more often than not. So I usually ran with this in high gain. All right, then we have a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced headphone output and a 6.35 millimeter single-ended headphone output. The rated power output from the 4.4 millimeter Pentacon, is 1.3 watts per channel. And I believe that's into a 32 ohm load. You get half the power output of that from the single-ended output, probably because the single-ended output is likely only using one of the two amplifiers in here because the amplifier is balanced. So that means I think you're going to want to use the Pentacon output if you can help it at all. Okay, and that, I mean, leads me to a bigger point. Like if you've watched my channel at all, you know that when you have a single-ended output on a balanced device, it tends to not be nearly as good as the balanced output. And that is true here too. Like I noticed that not only is the balanced output more powerful, but it sounds like it has a lower sonic background. It sounds cleaner. There's more clarity. There's more resolution and a more overall refined and controlled sound. Okay, coming from there, plus a bigger sound stage. So use that. Now, I have two quick thoughts on that, if you'll bear with me here. 4.4 millimeter Pentacon certainly makes sense from a space-saving standpoint. Putting an XLR output on there would probably take up way too much room, both on the front panel and inside the unit on this thing. And it is also true that 4.4 millimeter Pentacon connections are becoming more and more common, and that it is slowly, bit by bit, becoming a more standard balanced connection in the audio industry. So I get the inclusion of it there again from the space saving and the fact that it is becoming more common. However, the use of it here does reduce the overall value proposition of this unit just a little bit here in the short term. Let me explain that for just a moment. To use many headphones with this and some IEMs that you might be tempted to use here. Okay, but particularly with headphones, the vast majority of them do not ship with 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced cabling in their stock packaging. Much more often than not, you have to come back and buy an aftermarket cable that will work with that output, which again is clearly the better output of these two on this unit. Okay, I know some of you are probably jumping up and down and screaming. There are some headphones out there, and there are a fair number of IEMs, which I will grant if you're going to use IEMs on this. Though I think it being a desktop device, more people are probably going to be using headphones than IEMs. Okay, I know that there are some headphones out there that do offer 4.4 millimeter connectivity with their stock cabling. Fio's FT3 and FT5, which I've reviewed the FT3 and I have the FT5 in right now for review. I don't know if their new FT1 does or not. I'm going to ask for an FT1 review unit, but we'll see, okay? But like those are two examples from the same company that do have 4.4 millimeter Pentacon cabling in the stock packaging. But that, I mean, those are exceptions. There are not a ton that are doing that. More and more are, but we're just not there yet. So for the vast majority of headphones that you're going to want to plug into this device because of the price point, you know, from brands like Hi-Fi-Man, Sennheiser, Beyerdynamic, okay, just to name like 3 really heavy hitter brands. I mean, you could throw AKG in there, Audio-Technica, okay, and so on and so forth. They don't come with 4.4 millimeter cabling in their stock package, so you're going to have to spend money on an aftermarket cable to get one of those, which is going to reduce the overall system value that this unit brings a little bit. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. While we're in this view, let me show you the menu navigation here, because this multifunction knob here is really helpful. It allows you to access everything. There is no remote control, so it allows you to access everything. And it's both elegant and a little bit clunky, okay? So here on the home screen, just turn this to adjust volume, nothing surprising there, okay? Double tap it, and you can change the output type. So LOSE means line out. SE, I want to say is single-ended, but however the abbreviation works, it just means adjustable, so that you can use this as a preamp from the RCA outputs on the back, which I will show you here in a moment. Double tap it again, and now it's line out fixed volume. So the analog output on the back panel is just a DAC output, line out, fixed output level. Double tap it again, you're back to the headphone outputs. All right, press and hold for a couple of seconds, and you get into the settings menu where you can adjust gain, right? You single press when you're in there to run through the options, and you see that there are 3 gain settings on this piece. This is one area where this system of adjusting it is a little bit clunky, because if you're on low and you have a headphone plugged in and it's on your head and you have music playing and you go from low to medium or high and then you click this again to set it, okay, it's going to get really loud like that. The volume's going to go way up. There were a couple of times where I wasn't remembering how this worked, because I get all kinds of gear in here, and I went from low or medium to high, and it got really loud, and I'm like, oh, change the volume, and it doesn't. You see, it just rotates through the menu options. You actually have to go all the way over to the option that says return, and you see it can take a while to get there. Hit that, and now you can adjust the volume. So just be careful when it comes to gain adjustment there. All right, let's go back into that menu and look at other options. All right, so you can also change the output from here too if you want. Here are the sampling rate. I believe SAM is short for sampling rate. You've got on this unit, you have an oversampling versus non-oversampling mode, as was mentioned, but you also have a few digital filters, which is adjusted elsewhere apparently. We have USB version 1 and 2. So usually using 2. Whoops, I just got out of it. Okay. We'll get to that in a minute. Hold on. Let me get back to where I was. All right. Here we go. Okay, press and hold. Okay, come here. You can adjust this back to 1 for compatibility with like gaming consoles and that sort of thing. Okay, so an older USB standard. All right, here's the LCD brightness. Okay, LCD, I believe that's top. That's to change this setting up here. Okay, color, just a bunch of stuff there, like how long do you want this to just sit idle before it automatically goes into standby mode. Okay, use this to do a firmware update mode. Here's factory reset. Here's your firmware version. Here's to get out of the menu and so forth. Okay. Single hit this, and you can rotate through the input options. And you see we got USB, optical, coaxial. Okay, there we go. Okay, you can, so that's the menu navigation and all that. So this is a helpful knob, which is both elegant and simple, but also like particularly with that gain setting, you got to be careful with it because it can be a little bit clunky on that. All right, let me go ahead and unplug this, show you the back of the unit, and then also the power supply. All right, back of the unit, really straightforward, okay? DC power input. I'll show you the power supply in just a moment. Here's the USB audio input. You have optical in, you've got coaxial in out, and then you have the line out / pre-out single-ended RCA analog output here. Okay, what's the coaxial out business on here? You can get into the menu settings in here and you can change this coaxial connection here to an output so that you can take USB audio in and it will basically be a DDC and output that via the coaxial output here if you want, so you can use it as like a USB bridge if you wish. That is one feature I didn't try on here. I have done it on Fios in the past. It works. It doesn't always sound the best, but it's there if you're interested in it. Okay, let me grab the power supply. All right, why would I show you the power brick? Well, Fiio claims that it's a specially designed unit. It's a 12 volt 2 amp, I believe. Yep. 12 volt 2 amp output for 24 watts of power. But what I like about it is that the plugs, okay, the prongs that go into the wall or your power strip or whatever, are not directly on the power brick. There is this cord here in between so that this big honking thing does not take up room on your wall outlet or your power brick. So that's the main reason that I wanted to show you that. I like that feature. I think that's a nice little, like, we care about our users kind of a thing. That's a nice little touch. And then, of course, standard DC power plug here on that end. All right, so that's a lot of, like, the build of the unit. I mean, plastic shell, okay, on there. We have this rubber thing on the bottom here that, like, kind of helps it not slide around, but it's, like, not great. You're probably still going to want to use two hands, one to hold it down and one to, like, plug and unplug a headphone in there. Otherwise, it will slide around on the desk a little bit. Okay, but generally, fairly well-made unit. No real complaints for the price of $160, but man, feature packed. Like, I just went through all the menu options, like the things that this can do. Lots of functionality in there for $160. So it's not just that it's an R2R thing. It's got a load of features going on inside it as well. Okay, back to me on camera talking about sound and the like. I mentioned at the top of the video that I had some issues with the USB connection on this to the Windows operating system. Let me flesh that out really quickly here. Because it may or may not be an issue for you, and it could just be isolated to this unit. All right, the long and the short of it is when I plug this unit into a Windows-based laptop computer. I have a Windows 10 machine, which is a Microsoft Surface Pro 4, and then recently I acquired a new laptop, which is made by Asus. I forget the model number, but it has the Windows 11 operating system on it. And in either case, regardless of whether I was just using like the default Windows direct sound driver or a Wasapi driver or the ASIO driver that you download from Fiio's website, the USB connection to those Windows laptops had some popping and crackling, and as time goes on, the popping and crackling would increase in how often they happen, in their severity, and I would start to get some signal dropouts as well. I have been emailing back and forth with Fiio trying to figure out what's going on with that. They have sent me a beta version of an upcoming firmware update, but I could not get that to install despite them telling me, like, on either machine, on either Windows 10 machine or the Windows 11 machine, despite them giving me like 3 different tips and tricks to try to get it to work, different compatibility modes and that sort of thing. I just can't get it to install on here. From that either. Now, I posted on the K11 R2R thread on HeadPhi asking if anyone else was having USB connection issues to the Windows operating system. I have gotten some responses. So far, it seems like I might be the only one, and it could just be this unit, but this is my experience with that unit out there, or with this unit, so I just wanted to throw that out there. I also know that Fiio is working on a firmware update which could very well cure this unit, Okay, but I don't know yet, and again, I was unable to try it. So I'm going ahead and stating this publicly, just in case this happens to anyone else. And I know the Windows operating systems are still very popular, and given the price of this at $160, it's very likely someone is just going to buy this, plug it into a Windows 10 or 11 machine, and hope that it works. I had issues. On HeadPhi, I'm getting a lot of feedback that people are not having issues, although those who say so far that they are not having issues, more often than not, are just using this default Windows direct sound driver and not an exclusive mode driver like Wasapi or ASIO. Okay, so that's out there. However, my 10th generation Apple iPad worked just fine connecting USB to the K11 R2R. My Android phone, Samsung Galaxy S22 Plus, which is doing the filming right now, same thing, connected that USB to USB here. That was also solid, stable, no issues at all. Fiio has also sent me this little thing. This is the SR11, their new $110 US streamer that I'm working on a review for. It has a USB output on it, and it connected to the K11 R2R via USB. Clean, stable, no worries there no worries there either. So for me, the USB problem was limited only to the Windows operating system, nothing else. And again, I know that Fiio is working on it, but I just wanted to throw that out there just in case someone had the same issue that I did. Just know they are working on it, and just be aware of it, although it does seem like it is either isolated to this unit or it's just a low percentage of units that might have this issue. Okay. With that out of the way, let's start talking about sound. And to do that, what gear did I use this with? So I just went through, when I talk about the USB issues there, I just named a few of the pieces of source gear that I used. A Windows 10 laptop, a Windows 11 laptop, this SR11 streamer, my Android phone, and my 10th gen iPad. For some of that stuff, it would just be like web browsing and all of that to see how that worked. For music listening, I would mostly use Roon. Use any of those devices that I just named as Roon endpoints to play lossless FLAC files or DSD files that were played locally, again over Roon, or to stream FLAC files, either lossless or high-res, from Qobuz, again through Roon. For the majority of the use of this, I used it as a full-featured DAC amp, which means I used the headphone output here on the front, and I used a variety of headphones there. I did try a couple of entry-level headphones in the HiFiMan HE400SE and the Mastrop plus Sennheiser HD58X Jubilee. I will link to my reviews of both of those in the description down below. I also used some slightly higher tier stuff, like I recently reviewed the Apos and Audio-Technica collaboration known as the ATH R70X Refine. That is a 470 ohm, so a high impedance dynamic driver that got some time on here too. I also tried the HiFiMan Ananda Nano planar headphone on this as well. I also tried the HiFiMan Sundara on here when I did some comparison work with the ATH R70X Refine. I even tried my Focal Radiance on here, as well as my HiFiMan HE1000 SE, just because I wanted to see what could it really do with that really high-end headphone. And I had to use aftermarket cabling for just about all of those, okay? Or use an adapter to be able to use the 4.4 millimeter output on this, again, because basically none of those come with a 4.4 millimeter connector stock on their headphone cabling. And so that comes back to the value proposition that I talked about earlier, which needs to be kept in mind there. But Hart cables with their adapters were common in there just to try to stay lower in price. But I did try some other higher end cables, like I used a Plus Sound X8 for a little bit and on there with some stuff. And I also have some cables in from other manufacturers. I did a review of the Arctic Talos V2, for example, and that was used with some of those other headphones that I used in here too. And again, I only mention cables in this context for this device because that 4.4 millimeter output on the front there, headphone output, is sonically superior to the 6.35 millimeter output, quite obviously so to my ears. And so again, like, you're gonna need to probably buy aftermarket cables for your headphones to be able to use that output, because while it does happen for full-size headphones anyway, it is rare to get a 4.4 millimeter connection stock. Okay, how does it sound? Pretty good, okay? It's got a pretty neutral overall sonic profile to it. The perceived frequency response is what you would call flat, but it just falls within the range that most people are going to consider neutral, meaning that the bass, the mid-range, and the treble are all fairly even with each other. It really didn't stand out to me as having any kind of a profile that I would label as warm or bright or V-shaped or mid-forward, just pretty neutral across the board, honestly. The tonal balance for the price is pretty strong. And what I mean by tonal balance here is the relationship between fundamental frequencies and their harmonics. For the price point, it does a pretty good job of making sure that those are realistically and naturally proportioned to each other. One exception to that is in the treble. The control in the upper regions there does lack just a little bit. So if you have a headphone that is already prone to sibilance, hi-fi mins are an example of that, then you can get some sharp S's and T's a little bit more often than I would like on here. It's not out of line for an entry-level piece, but I have also heard it better at the entry level as well. You can help that by switching to the non-oversampling mode, which we'll get to here in just a moment. All right. The dynamic impact on this is actually pretty impressive, and I noticed this particularly with my Focal Radiance. Just the Radiance for whatever was really hitting pretty hard from this thing. And also the Hi-Fi Min Ananda Nano, which is one of the slammier Hi-Fi Mins, had a healthy amount of physical impact and slam from this unit as well. So at least in the low end, it can hit fairly hard there, and the dynamics through the mid-range and the treble are also good. They're not necessarily standout, but they're also not lacking in any way either. The resolution is not fantastic. Okay, again, it's an entry-level piece, $160 US, but it's good enough. There's a reasonable amount of texturing and all of that to the sound, and the detail retrieval is good but not great. Okay, but again, it's not really a problem for a $160 unit either. Likewise with the spatial holography, the imaging, the separation, the depth of the layering, they're good. It's fairly strong in like the imaging. So again, for anyone who's new out here, when we audiophile say imaging, what we're talking about is like we have a sound stage, a presentation of like the space in which the music exists, right? Imaging is where in that space, where in that soundstage it sounds like individual sounds are coming from. I hear that piano right here. I hear that trumpet right here. That kind of thing. This unit does a pretty good job of that, particularly in the lateral dimension. Where it's not as strong, and again, it's an entry-level piece, is in the separation, meaning putting space between those sonic images. So where is the sound not? Okay, that's kind of the spatial separation aspect of it. And again, it's not terrible, it's not bad, it's pretty appropriate for the price, I would say. It's just not going to be all that standout on there. Now, the amplifier in this thing seems rather capable up to a point. It handled the ATH R70 Extra Fine, which again is a 470 ohm headphone, reasonably well. Did inject a little bit of sibilance in the upper registers, upper frequencies at a higher rate than I would like. So I think like it's just like those kind of high Z headphones there are just kind of walking the line of what this thing can handle even in high gain. Okay, on that. The treble control is not great, and like particularly the HE1000 SE in particular, like that was showing that like a lot of sibilance and all of that was coming out of this. So I think you're going to want to, most people I think are going to want to, for the most part, pair this with headphones that are a little less bright. Like the Mastrop Sennheiser HD58X Jubilee sounded pretty good on this. Like the slight brightness on this because of that slight harshness in the treble. It's not an elevated treble presence. It's just that the ear notices it a bit more because of the sibilance in there. but like a warmer or a darker tuned headphone, kind of like the HD58X can be, which is at least a little bit rolled off in the treble, okay, perked up a little bit because of that on here. So the amplifier is decent, but like it does have some limitations. I think the strength of this unit sonically does come from the DAC, because from the line output here, or the variable output into an outboard amp, like I think I tried it was the Erzatich Perfidus. That's right, that's the amp that I use for this because it's single-ended only. Like a lot of that sounded a lot better from this one's DAC through that admittedly much higher quality amp than what's in here sounded better. So the DAC is not really injecting all that much of the sibilance in there and so forth. So I think the amp is responsible for that primarily. So that is something to keep in mind as well. All right, oversampling versus non-oversampling. There's not a clear winner as to which one sounds better to me between those two. I thought the oversampling mode had a little bit more resolution and detail retrieval in it and a little bit more overall clarity, but that's also where some of that treble harshness and sibilance would come out. Okay, the non-oversampling mode was not as detailed or as resolving in its sound, so it sounded a little bit veiled to me and also thus not as clear. But it also was much smoother and more laid back and like had an overall more refined and, dare I say, musical quality to it. And it also was less sharp in that treble, so that helped out there too. So if you have a bright headphone that is getting sibilant on this thing, the non-oversampling mode can help. Now, if you have an outboard digital filter that you like, or like you have music files that are already 384 kilohertz in sampling rate, okay, then you're going to want to use the NOS mode on this and just let that 384 kilohertz signal through, okay, untouched by the oversampling filter. So are you going to prefer the oversampling or the non-oversampling? Depends on which sonic traits you value, depends on which headphones you have, and it's going to also depend on what music you're listening to as well. All right, I also said earlier in the review that I didn't think the Fiio K11 R2R was the best sounding DAC amp under $200 US. I think that currently is probably the Schiit Magni Unity, which with this, the Magni Unity with the ESS DAC card in it, so that's going to be a Delta Sigma DAC again for the new folks out there, runs about $190 US, $189. So $30 more than this, but still under $200 US. Now, as far as features go, it is not close. The K11 R2R has way more features than the Magni Unity with the ESS DAC card has. Like, it has more digital inputs, it has DDC operation in it, it's got the oversampling and the non-oversampling. And I mean, the list just goes on in terms of like, it can handle more decoding options, like it can do DSD, the DAC in the Schiit cannot, and so on and so forth. So in terms of features, it's not even close. However, one feature that the Magni offers is that it has an analog input. So if you're a vinyl fan or something like that, you can still connect your turntable preamp through here and get that to play through your headphones, which you cannot do on the Fiio. The Fiio is going to require digital sources only. All right. But talking about sound, the Magni Unity to me does sound better overall than the K11 R2R. A bigger soundstage, a more detailed, resolving, and refined sound, a more holographic and three-dimensional spatial presentation to its sound. Not huge gaps, but noticeable. Another thing that the Magni Unity does is it has just a 1/4 inch or 6.35 millimeter headphone output. So you remember how I was talking about to use this 4.4 millimeter Pentacon output on the K11 R2R with most headphones that are out there, you're going to have to buy another cable. This 1/4 inch output on the Magni Unity is going to work with most headphones right out of the box, because just about all of them come with a single-ended headphone cable that is either a 1/4 inch or 3.5 millimeter that's just easy to adapt to a 1/4 inch or 6.35 millimeter with a simple adapter, which is also often found in the box. Okay. So that to me is going to generally kind of wipe out the price difference between these two being $30 and, like, you know, kind of change the value proposition a little bit if you're going for just pure sound. I want to reiterate here that the K11 R2R still sounds very good. It is not that far behind the Magni Unity. Is it noticeably behind? Yes, but it's not a huge gap. It's still a fine sounding piece, okay, at its price and for what it is. Okay, it also has way more features, right? And it'll be easier to get outside of the United States. If you try to buy this outside of the United States, the piece of shit here, like, it's probably going to cost a lot more. So then the value proposition calculation just changes again. But even here in the US, I do think the combination of performance and features at this price is a pretty compelling value for the K11 R2R. And so, like, it's easy for me to recommend as a starting point for a lot of people, provided you don't have that USB issue with the Windows operating system that I've been having. But again, only with Windows. Fiio is working on it, and apparently it's not a universal problem. Okay, so where does that leave us? Like, should you buy the Fiio K11 just because it's R2R? Probably not. Okay, I personally don't really care if a DAC is Delta Sigma or R2R, and if it's Delta Sigma, if it's AKM or ESS or Cirrus Logic. Like, I personally don't really care. I just care about how it sounds. And on that front, Fiio K11 R2R does sound pretty good. Again, very compelling overall feature set and performance for its price. So, and the fact that they are bringing R2R, a different approach to doing digital analog conversion at this price, is exciting. Okay, and that it sounds pretty decent is also exciting. So again, I can recommend the Fiio K11 R2R. I did enjoy listening to it quite a bit, especially with its matching SR11 streamer here. Review for this coming up soon, but those two together was pretty good. I liked that a lot, particularly for their price points. So I'll go ahead and leave it there. Thanks for watching my review of the Fiio K11 R2R DAC amp. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment if you have not already. And as always, enjoy the music.